Addiction is defined as a chronic relapsing brain disease that is characterized by compulsive drug seeking and use despite harmful consequences. So emphasize chronic relapsing brain disease. Brain imaging studies from drug-addicted individuals show physical changes in the areas of the brain that are critical for judgment, decision-making, learning, and memory. Finally, the last important point is that in vulnerable individuals, the disease of addiction is produced by chronic administration of the drugs themselves. In other words, the drugs cause the addiction. Here's the model, and it's not a model that I disagree with, by the way. It's pretty well researched and well defended, and there's been a lot of studies that converge on this kind of model of addiction. There's three regions you have to think about. First is the prefrontal cortex, and in particular the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is the most sophisticated region up here, and it's responsible for judgment, decision-making, perspective-taking, self-regulation, all that good stuff. And you can think of that as the bridge of the ship. That's where we steer our behavior. That's where we steer ourselves from. So there's that region, and then there's the striatum, the ventral striatum is sometimes called the nucleus accumbens. You'll see that a lot in the addiction literature. And we can call that the motivational engine. So the striatum evolved as part of the motor system, and it actually gets us mammals to act and to basically pursue goals, because that's what we do. When we act, we pursue goals. The goal might be getting away from something, but in this case, let's focus on getting towards something. And it also generates the motivation for doing that. So mammals, unlike frogs, need a push to get them to do something. They need a motive or an emotional drive. We don't just flick out our tongues when a fly goes by. We have to feel some kind of attraction. And that is generated by the striatum. So you can see that that's an important region of the brain when it comes to addiction. And then this part of the midbrain, the ventral tegmental area, is, you can call it a dopamine pump. It manufactures dopamine, which is a neurochemical you'll often read about in addiction studies. And what dopamine does is it basically, it does a lot of things, but it energizes the striatum. It turns on all these cells in the striatum, and it gets the striatum to focus on the goal. So it narrows the beam of attention, and it drives behavior toward the goal. Yeah, that's what it does. It focuses and drives behavior and allows you to follow a sequence of steps that leads to the goal that you're after, the particular goal. So what happens in addiction is that you get a lot of dopamine coming up from the midbrain to the striatum in the presence of drugs or booze or gambling or sex or porn or pizza or whatever it is that you're addicted to. So the striatum is activated and becomes focused on the goal. And that happens again and again and again. And it happens in response to cues or stimuli that are connected to the activity of choice, the thing that you want. Okay, so then the other issue is that there is naturally a balance between striatal activation and prefrontal cortex activation, because you need to control these impulses, and we do, all the time. Every moment of our waking life, pretty much, there's some kind of balance between impulse and control, self-regulation, modifying behavior in favor of, better consequences. And in addiction, what happens is that this bundle of fibers that connects these two regions, there becomes less crosstalk. So there's a reduction in the communication between the striatum and the prefrontal cortex. And what happens over time is that these two systems become less connected, and you can even think of them as being somewhat, disconnected from each other when in the presence of drugs or cues or other stimuli associated. It doesn't mean that this disconnection is always there, because you can live a very normal life and do very normal and well-planned things that require judgment and logic, but when those cues are around, when you're walking by the pub or the liquor store, or your dealer calls, that's when this disconnection occurs time and time and time again. So that's the problem, right? That's a big problem. We all agree that it's a big problem.